Hey, Jamin here again, iPlumber, Hamilton, New Zealand. Just thinking about what we could talk about today, what we could bore you to sleep with plumbing wise today. Yesterday did a bit of a hot water cylinder video going over different types and what's sort of the best bang for buck and way to go. But I guess we could lean into a little bit more about the ins and outs of hot water cylinder maintenance or hot water system maintenance, because it does seem to be, the hot water system is the most problematic sort of appliance that we deal with, and the most urgent most of the time, unless there's a blocked sewer going on or something like that. But yeah, so if we start with mains pressure electric, since it's the most popular common type at the moment, most people aren't aware these have a sacrificial anode, which is basically a metal rod that comes down from the top of the cylinder and is made up of sort of zinc and magnesium, which prevents corrosion going on of the tank. And we tell people this every sort of week, here or there or thereabouts, and nobody seems to be aware of it, or very few people, unless they had a boat or something like that, because boats have anodes. But so that's something that lasts about 10 years, and then it needs checking every 5 years and replacing every 10, with most hot water cylinders. So unless you have a stainless steel one, then that won't have one, but there's not a lot of those out there. Those are only a sort of recent thing. But yeah, so definitely check how old your tank is, and if it's over 10 years old, and probably you could get away with maybe stretching it out to 15 if it's too late, 15 to 20 if you want. It's still going to prevent further corrosion. Some's probably already started to happen if it's older than that sort of 10-year mark, but it's going to prevent it getting any worse. And we find, even without the anode being changed, we find most mains pressure hot water cylinders tend to last 30 years before they burst, roughly, give or take 5 years. But when they do burst, they don't just drip. So they'll flood out your house within a matter of minutes, and usually it's overnight when the pressure's higher, when you're fast asleep. And most hot water cylinders that are that old, they're not on a tray, they don't have a drain, so they're just going to flood your house, wet your carpet, ruin your skirtings and your jib board, and you name it, the kitchen. So pays to get a bit of maintenance done on your hot water cylinder. Check the age, check the if the anode's been done. You should be able to tell by looking at the top little plastic cover that covers it, and see if it's actually been pried open in the past. It can be done in place in most houses. You don't have to take the tank out to do it, so it's not that hard or expensive to do, and it's a lot cheaper than replacing the tank. So that's probably the one thing not many people know about. You obviously want to check if it's dripping outside, the relief drain, if it's dripping onto the ground or into a gully dish maybe, which is your outside drain where your pipes come out. See if it's dripping in there constantly. If it's just dripping every now and then when the cylinder's heating up, that's normal. But if it's dripping every day, all day, then you've got an issue with one of your valves, and best to get a plumber in to replace one of your relief valves, sometimes both, or it could be overheating, or in a rarer case, or some other issue. But that's a pretty quick and easy fix most of the time. Things like checking the temperature of the water every now and then, every few years, in the actual tank. because the tank is going to be higher temp than what you get at your tap, because it goes through a tempering valve and gets mixed with a bit of cold. And then there's also checking the water temp after your tempering valve and making sure that's working correctly. And you know, you can always save a bit of money by insulating that hot pipe coming out of that tank. So yeah, and it can be a good idea to flush out hot water cylinders as well, especially low pressure ones. They get a nice big build up of brown sludge at the bottom that you know, can't be good, but it does just tend to stay at the bottom, and the hot water comes out the top and goes to your tap. But you know, those low pressure ones do tend to, when that stuff sitting at the bottom, I would say adds to the issue, contributes to the corrosion issue of them when they do start dripping. Although they only start dripping slowly, you know, they're not so scary when they do burst, but they tend to last 50 odd years, give or take, depending on where you are. This is in Hamilton, New Zealand, so if you have more chlorine in your water in some other cities, they can be done for quite quickly. So, but yeah, low pressure ones, you know, you've got a pressure reducing valve underneath there, or what some people know as an Ajax valve, that can cause them to overflow on the roof. So if you've got water trickling over the roof out the exhaust, then that's a valve that needs to be serviced. So you know, we can do that, service or replace that valve depending on the age of it and the condition. And obviously again, check the temperature, and you know, quite often the thermostat or the element will go in those ones. They don't usually have a tempering valve in a low pressure installation, the older ones anyway, or they don't have relief valves quite often either. So you know, the other problem with those low pressure ones is the exhaust can freeze in the colder months, and then when that freezes, the pressure keeps coming in, and they can rupture and start to drip as well. So it's a good idea to insulate that exhaust if you can, or valve vent it inside the house and run the drain to outside. Then we can talk about gas servicing of, you know, your hot water gas cylinder or your gas caliphant, but both of them, you know, do need servicing, cleaning the burners and the pilot and the electrodes, checking the gas pressure. So you know, and then they all have, the cylinders have the same valves as an electric cylinder, so there can be those similar issues, and they, you know, most of them have an anode as well. Yeah, in your gas caliphant, I recommend every sort of 4 years to get that serviced. Probably similar with your gas hot water cylinder. At a minimum, you could go more often than that if you wanted to be more prudent, I guess. But yeah, if you're not haven't stopped listening already, you're probably thinking about it. So I'm about to go and do something here. So I'll catch you tomorrow or next week. Peace out.